Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about gay men, Pride season, and summer lovin'. Summer lovin' had me a blast. Summer lovin' happened so fast. I met a girl, oh boy, crazy for me, met a boy, cute as could be. Those are from songwriters Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey from the classic musical Grease, and that song was called Summer Nights. So, those lyrics are from Grease, and also its classic film adaptation from 1978, starring John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John, and directed by out director Randall Kleiser. That song, Summer Lovin', takes place early in the show as a duet between Danny and Sandy, the lead characters, who have returned in fall for their senior year of high school, at first, unbeknownst to them, the same school, and sing wistfully to their separate groups of friends about their brief summer fling romance at some distant resort, egged on by their friends who want to know all the lurid details that a summer affair can bring. And gay men can have summer lovin' as well in their own way, just like the straight kids. And we can have them way, way beyond high school. More on this later. It seems like any time after Pride season starts every year in early June, the summer lovin' can begin. And even on Memorial Day weekend or July 4th, which I've talked about in other episodes and in other blog articles on gaytherapyla.com/blog. I've even written about Pride before and given 5 tips for an optimal spring summer. Those are either previous podcast episodes or previous blog articles, and you can check those out if you'd like. But for this year, for 2022, we are celebrating Pride in the aftermath of the almost 2.5-year hiatus due to the COVID global pandemic, when many cities across the world are holding in-person Pride events once again. And while COVID is certainly not completely over, I've had it myself just this week for the first time, it's largely been deemed safe to hold Pride events again, especially outdoors and for fully vaccinated people. But even before the pandemic, Pride events have been somewhat diluted in recent years, being seen as a commercial marketing opportunity for cynical corporations, including corporations who hypocritically don't really support LGBT rights, especially in their corporate policies or their employee handbooks or even the politicians that they donate political money to, and as an opportunity for even just quasi-ally straight people to spend money in gay neighborhoods of cities. It's lost some of the militant and disinhibited, in-your-face political and social activism of past LGBT commemorations of the Stonewall Uprising of 1969, eclipsed by music festivals that subtly obscure the LGBT activism that is the biggest part of Pride's history. Even in our seemingly progressive times, there is still plenty of work to be done to defend against the insidious and systematic and determined erosion of our rights by Republican and religious conservative future political candidates trying to rally the most rabid ranks of their right-wing political base. But sure, we've had inspiring good news this year as well. Seeing Heartstopper on TV, the sweet story of a pair of English schoolboys who fall in love, not unlike the gay rom-com movie Love, Simon, and its TV offspring Love, Victor, as well as Sex Education on TV, and everybody's talking about Jamie on stage and screen and streaming TV. We've had seemingly more visibility and diversity represented everywhere. But we've also had what I call black letter law serious attacks too, where the state of Florida passed its Don't Say Gay bill, which was in practice much more oppressive than its supporters claimed. Not only banning sexually explicit content for younger kids, which there actually never was, but also labeling any LGBT plus related content in schools as such, as pornography or adult explicit content for any age of student, putting a chill on teachers, staff, students, and administrators that is ominously reminiscent of fascist oppression against whole groups of citizens in history, such as against Jews in Germany or Europe in the early stages of the Holocaust, or the cops against LGBT people in New York City at the time of Stonewall and before. The founder of the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida's movement has publicly stated that she wants to get Don't Say Gay bills in every school district in every state in the Union, paralleling the current re-empowering of the movement to destroy the right and access to legal abortions. So, as I like to remind everyone at Pride season in my own little tradition, I encourage us all, LGBT plus community and our true allies, not like the fake allies who end up attending an anti-gay celebrity church in LA called Hillsong, to celebrate and reiterate the spirit of Stonewall and our activism victories, but also to be ever vigilant against the seemingly ubiquitous backsliding that our enemies are always scheming to impose, to legally take away our rights little by little. Their goal is to force us back in the closet, and our Pride movement is to prevent that from happening anywhere ever. So Pride is a double-edged sword, just like I was saying about summer romances. So I'd like to share some thoughts about summer lovin' today, because it seems like the vacation boyfriend or the inherently temporary summer romance is a common experience shared among a diversity of gay men, even globally, on any holiday weekend, but especially during summer vacation. Many of us can relate. Summer often means a time when we go on vacation. Not all of us, it's a privilege, but a lot of us worldwide. Meaning that we vacate the routines of our normal lives at home and work and household routines and even hobbies, and travel somewhere to explore a different way of life, domestically or internationally, just for a little while. For gay men, seeing new places means seeing new guys. Men in general like to have novel stimulation, which can apply to sex as well, when we like different kinds of sex, perhaps with different kinds of guys, which can be a real impetus for consensual non-monogamy. And I've written about that before a lot, and I'm actually certificated in consensual non-monogamy and polyamorous families from my work as a certified sex therapist in the U.S. And that kind of novel stimulation desire can be in both straight men and gay men, but socially gay men seem to have more opportunity to practice that with consent than straight men do. So whether it's young men taking a vacation, young gay men taking a vacation to see their grandparents in another city, or having a summer abroad educational opportunity, or adult gay men who are working hard and earning a good salary enough to provide for a luxurious overseas vacation to one of the world's great gay affirmative resort cities, or a gay cruise, spending time away from home gives us an exposure to fellow gay men we wouldn't meet under normal circumstances. Some of my clients in my private practice as a gay men specialist, therapist, and life career executive coach for 30 years now in 2022 have described some of these stories to me. Gary was one. Let's call him Gary. Gary was a hard-working attorney in a major American city who was somewhere between being a twink from his days as a high school gymnast and the middle-aged daddy he was imminently becoming. He told me about taking a trip to the very gay-friendly island of Mykonos in Greece with two of his local buddies. And he carefully divided spending time between his hometown buddies, one who liked to drink a lot of the local ouzo, and one who liked to run up and down the beach just to see who he could see. And then Gary met Gil, a handsome flight attendant who was visiting Mykonos from London, who was this beautiful exotic mix of Spanish, Italian, and Irish descent that gave him all-world attractiveness. Gary met Gil first in the dim light of a dance club, and then Gary found that Gil in the clear daylight on the beach was just as beautiful. And Gary and Gil first talked on the beach, then danced at the outdoor club, and then ate at little cafes, and slept together in the quaint hotel of the island that Gil had been to a few times before. And despite Gil's slight accent from speaking many languages, which was handy for his flight attendant job, the real language they were speaking was of instant infatuation. Small talk led to bigger talk, and Gary learned that Gil was as smart and deep as he was beautiful. Gil's really easy to talk to style was completely free of pretension, and that urban gay attitude that was refreshing for Gary, because Gil was unlike any man he had met back home in the U.S. in a long time. Gay men on vacation just seem to have their guard down more, which makes them more accessible and kind of with a sense that there's really no time to waste. So Gary and Gil spent time on the Greek islands, sun-kissed glow, which seemed to give just this idyllic light to their whole experience. And then time was up. Gary was being beckoned by his friends to go souvenir shopping with them on the rest of the island and have their final dinner on Mykonos before heading back to civilization, flying from Mykonos to Rome to home and a marathon flight the next day. Gary fantasized about giving up his life at home and staying on the island to open up a souvenir shop with Gil, but he knew that wouldn't afford him the life he really knew and that he really wanted at heart. He had worked hard to become an attorney, and he wanted to do that. So Gary said his goodbyes to Gil as Gil was heading the much shorter trip home to London in another day himself. And they did the usual contact info exchange, this time sharing their profiles on Instagram, unlike the exchange business cards days of Gary's youth in law school. The brief vacation romance with Gil was Gary's number one topic in therapy with me the next week, after the jet lag had subsided and the legal cases oriented Gary back to the reality of the weekday workload that made the Greek sunsets fade quickly in his memory. When I asked him to process, a word that we therapists use a lot, his experiences, Gary reflected on a somewhat bittersweet but still very sweet experience. He knew Gil was probably not a serious option to ever meet again due to the distance and the age and some life plan interests. But Gary related how idyllic times like a vacation romance can help to clear our heads of everyday stress. My article and podcast episode on gym crushes and cherishing your romantic notions is in the archives, and there's a blog version of it on gaytherapylight.com/blog, because guys talk to me about gym crushes a lot, and we talk about the value of having the romantic notion or the flight of fancy, because there's a whole world out there waiting for us beyond the confines of our routine life, beyond the confines of the office walls or our sometimes annoying homes that always seem to need some kind of repair or adjustment. And Gary had come in for his session a little hot from the short but congested drive from his nearby office building, back in the office again after mostly working from home during all the pandemic. His slight scowl from the annoyance of the traffic delay melted away to a bashful smile as he described everything about the experience. At first, from the beauty of the island and the antics of his long-term buddies that only gay men seem to understand, such as in the new movie Fire Island, shows a lot of the camaraderie among gay men traveling. But his wistful smile turned into a broader grin when he talked about Gil. All the muscle tension he had held in his shoulders had disappeared with that. He seemed to be fascinated with Gil's tales of growing up in a small town and then running marathons in big cities later. So I asked him, "Do you think you'll see him again?" And Gary said, "I don't know. We've messaged on Instagram just once, but he's already been busy, I'm busy, and who knows when, but I hope so. I have to pay off Greece first, And I think he might be dating somebody. And I didn't even tell him about Chris, a guy that Gary had started to date just before the Greece trip. Gary then started processing, that word again, another topic that had been a focus of his therapy for months before his trip. It was like the material that he related about Greece was a respite, a vacation from his usual therapeutic work. And then he was back to it. Only this time, he seemed more energized to address the problems in a refreshed way, discussing some new ideas about how he might handle some long-standing challenges. So, I guess gay men having some good old-fashioned summer lovin' on vacation does a lot of good. And I hope this summer that it does that for you too. It turned colder. That's where it ends. So I told him we'll still be friends. Then we made our true love vow. Wonder what he's doing now. Summer dreams, ripped at the seams. But, oh, those summer nights. Happy Pride, and I'll see you next time.